Welcome to another English class. This time we want to look at grammar, and in considering grammar we would tilt towards tenses and aspects. Grammar is very elaborate, but it can be split in such a way that understanding it's made. So today we are not concentrating on parts of speech. We don't want to look at sentence structure. We want to look at tenses and aspects. All right, this aspect of grammar is quite relevant because it aids writing as well as speaking. All right, so to achieve this, we would define tenses and mention the types. We also look at the definition of aspects and mention the types, then give sentence examples. Okay, so let's start. When we talk about tenses, we refer to time and action it's done. Tenses refer to time of an action. All right, so looking at the definition here, we say that tense is a grammatical term used to describe time. All right, it's used to describe time. Time in what way? Is it describing time in respect to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock? No. Or rather, it's describing time in respect to when something happened. Did it happen now? Did it happen in the past? Did it happen in the perfect? So these are the aspects of time we are looking at. So that is whether an action or state happened in the past, it's happening in the present, or will happen in the future. So tense is not limited to this, but these are its basic uses: the present, the past, and the what? The future. All right, so we can show different tenses with the use of inflections and auxiliary verbs. We will cover this in details throughout this article, but let's take a look at some quick definitions of these terms. We mentioned inflections and we mentioned auxiliary verbs. Now, when we talk about inflections, we refer to a type of morpheme. What do we mean by morpheme? Morpheme is referred to a group of words added to a root word to change the meaning. Group of words added to a particular root word, or what we call the base word. Now, if I have the word teach, if I add the morpheme ER, ER is a morpheme. I will no longer have the word teach. I would rather have the word teacher. And teacher means a person who teaches. While teach is a verb, teacher is what? A noun. So you see that morphemes to an extent do same work as a suffix. So inflections are needed in tenses. Why? Because they will help us to form a past form of a word, all right? Or it can help us to form the participle of a word. So when we talk about inflections, we refer to a type of morpheme. We say that they are added to a base word to express a grammatical meaning or change. For example, in terms of tenses, we add the morpheme ed to regular verbs to show that the action happened in the past. It must not be ed, it can be d, depending on the very verb word. So if I have the word create, create is a verb word, I need to add the morpheme d to the word create, or I add what we call inflections. Remember we said morphemes, inflections are a type of morpheme. So if I add the inflection d to create, I will have the past tense of create. Create is a present tense word, while created is a past form. So I've added the inflection d to the word create to form what? Created. So that's what inflections are. So when you hear of the word inflections in English, you should think of it as a type of what? Morpheme. And we said that morphemes are letters added to a base or root word to change the meaning of that word. Now, to also look at tenses, we would also consider auxiliary verbs. But permit me to go back to inflections and the regular verbs that were mentioned. Now, under verbs, we have what we call regular verbs and irregular verbs. Now, regular verbs are those verbs that form their past and past participle by adding D or ED. All right, that's regular verbs. When you say that something is regular, so if I have the word book as a verb, to book a flight, if I have the word book as a present form of a verb, the past is booked and the past participle is also booked. So what I've done is to add the inflection ED to the word book to form the past and the past participle. So such type of verbs are called the regular verbs. Those verbs that form their past and the past participle by adding either the inflection D or ED. Now, we also have the irregular verbs. Irregular verbs form their past and past participle in varying forms. But that's not what we have for today. Let's not digress. So let's look at the second way of forming tenses. All right. In talking about tenses, we said we are looking at inflections and the auxiliaries. Auxiliary verbs are called helping verbs. Now, definitely I would teach verb, yes, because it's actually the part of speech that is very voluminous. So it's not what one would do in a hurry. So when we are looking at verbs, we have what we call the main verbs and the auxiliary verbs. The main verbs and the auxiliary verbs. Now, auxiliary verbs are called verb linkers, the link words. All right, they help to link the subject to a descriptive word. Now, auxiliary verbs are not doing words. So that's why I always tell my students, when you say that verbs are just action words, you are limiting your definition or knowledge of verbs to those verbs that show action. So what happens to those words that are actually verbs but don't show action? And that is why I tell them that verbs are not just action words but state of being words or word linkers. So when we talk about auxiliary verbs, we talk about those verbs that link the subject to what it's been described as or to be. All right. So under your auxiliary verb, we have what we call the primary auxiliary verbs and the secondary auxiliary verbs. Remember, I said that another word for auxiliary verbs are helping verbs. So the primary auxiliary verbs are such words as is, are, was, were, been, am. These are your primary auxiliary verbs. Then we have our secondary auxiliary verbs, which are also called modal verbs. These verbs are can, could, shall, should, will, would, may, might, there, ought to. So these are our words, auxiliary verbs holistically. So verbs used alongside with the main verb to add extra words, information. There are certain verbs that can't stand on their own. So what auxiliary verbs do is to help those verbs to stand. Now, as a matter of fact, the ing type of verb is seen as a non-finite verb because it doesn't show tense. Remember, we say that a verb is referred to as non-finite when it doesn't show tense. And that's why we're looking at tenses. When we mean that a verb doesn't show tense, that means it doesn't tell you the time of an action. If you say singing, I love to do. Singing in that context is not a verb. It's rather a gerund or a noun, all right? But if you make a sentence, you say she dash singing. You did not put is or was. You just say she's singing. You see that it wouldn't make any meaning. So what auxiliary verbs do is to help certain verbs that can't stand on their own to fully stand on their own. That's verbs that don't have tense. By the time you add your auxiliary verb, it will help these verbs to make sense and to have tense. So they are sometimes called helping verbs. For example, we use the auxiliary verb will to express future tense. Now let's look at the types of tenses. All right. Now, types of tenses we have basically are three. But when we look at these three, we split them into aspects. All right. So sometimes people teach it holistically. When they are looking at tenses, they may give you about 10 types of tenses. But here we want to look at tenses and we also bring aspects. All right. We look at tenses as a time of an action and we look at aspects as the extension, all right, of an act. over a period of time. Extension, when we talk about aspects, we look at extension, or when we talk about tenses, we're looking at the time of an action. So it brings us to past tense, present tense, and future tense. Then when we are talking about extension of these actions, we'll now start looking at present perfect, the past perfect, future continuous, past continuous, present continuous. Those are aspects of the tenses that we have mentioned. So tenses, remember I said, tells the time of an action, but aspects tells us the extension of the action. All right? So now, some grammarians state that the future tense isn't really a tense at all, and it's just a modification of the present tense. However, it is widely accepted and taught that the future tense is one of the three main tenses. It is one of the three main tenses. So when we combine three main tenses with aspects, we have about 12 different tenses if we are combining tenses with aspects. So let's go into the work. So this is what we have, verb tenses, just like showing us. So you have the past tense, you have the present tense, you have the future tense. So you say that's it. So present, now, past, then future, what will happen. That's why we always use the auxiliary verb will when we want to talk about future. Now this is the past tense. The past tense shows that an action or state of being happened in the words past, that something happened. That is just what the past tense is. Something happened in the past. So the past tense may also be used to refer to the present. I wish I had a cat. That is what you are wishing. So once you're wishing thing, you refer to the past. I wish I could. You can't say I wish I can. No, I wish I could. It's a present act. It's something that it's happening, but you are referring also to the past. All right? So we can also use the past tense to talk about habitual actions or events in the past that were repeated or occurred regularly. We used to go to Scotland. That's a past. We used to go to Scotland. She would always fall asleep at school. Now, I made mention of the modal verbs, which are classified under the helping verbs. Would is an example of a modal verb, right, in the past. So where you have will as present, would is the past form of will as a modal verb. So she would always fall asleep. Remember we said past tense showing what? Habitual action. That's what someone is fond of doing. So whenever this person is in school, she would fall asleep. So that's what past tense is used for, to show habitual action. And we also have present tense showing habitual action, but note that the verb form has to change. Now, when we are talking about tenses, we are restricting our knowledge on the part of speech called verb. It is the verb that we are working with. Remember we said that tense shows time of an action, and it's the verb that helps us to know the time of an action. So let's look at some examples of different variations of past tense. We have different variations of past tense, and from these variations of past tense, that's where we'll get our tenses. Our aspects. From these different variations, we'll have our aspects. So I hiked up Everest yesterday. That's a variation of the past, adding the ed. Remember the inflection ed to the word hike, but we added, in this case, we added only d. Remember I told us our inflections being an aspect of morpheme are letters or a letter added to a root word. So it can be d or ed. Basically, since it's verb, we are looking at d or ed. So hike is a verb word. So to give the past form of hike is hiked. So the inflection, that's the morpheme added, is just the d. So it's not a must that ed has to be added. The verb word determines the choice of inflection. If your verb word ends with e, the inflection to be added will be d. But where your verb word doesn't end with e, and the word you want to form has to go with ed, then you add your ed. She had danced all night. Had shows past perfect tense. So this is, remember we are looking at different variations of past tense. So she had danced shows past perfect tense. The first example shows simple perfect simple past tense. Now, the second example, she had danced all night, shows past perfect tense. We went to London for New Year's Eve. Now, remember when we looked at regular verbs, in a nutshell, I made us to know that regular verbs are verbs that add D or ED to the present form of the verb to get the past and the past participle. And I also mentioned that we have irregular verbs, and I said that irregular verbs are formed in varying forms. We have irregular verbs that are formed by a total change of word. If I have the word break, the present is break, the past is broke, and the past participle is broken. That's an irregular verb. So went is a form of a past form of a verb under the irregular. Remember, we are looking at different variations of past tense. So we have seen the past tense formed by simple past tense on regular verb form. We've seen she had danced, formed from past perfect tense. We have seen we went to London for New Year's Eve, formed from irregular verbs. All right? Go, went, gone. All right? That is it. That's from irregular verbs. We have past tense from regular verbs. We have past tense formed from past perfect tense. We have past tense formed from irregular verbs, that's went. And we have past tense formed by what? Past perfect continuous tense. Past perfect continuous tense. James had been working for miles. So all these examples show a variation of the past tense. Okay, so we have the present tense. So present tense shows that an action or state of being is what is happening in the present. I am going to the shop, or I live in Liverpool. It's present. I am. That's a present form of a verb. So uses of the present tense, it can also be used to talk about future or action that is planned. Present tense has four functions. It functions, or it can be used in four ways. One, it's used to show action planned. Example, the train leaves at 10 p.m. What's the present verb form there? Leaves. That's the present showing what? Action that has been planned. So we also refer to a habitual action or event using what? The present tense. That's uses. Number two example is to show habitual action. This is something that is repeated or happens regularly. He smiles a lot. That's habitual. He smiles a lot is what he's fond of. I normally go to the library on a Wednesday. That's habitual. What the person is fond of. All right? Then another use of the present tense is to show general truth or a fact. Something that you know is not that in your home, that is what happens. No. When you talk about general truth, it means that everybody, once you say it, anybody wherever knows that is what it's like a law. All right? So when we say that oil floats on water, when someone says oil floats on water, everybody knows that indeed oil floats on water. When you say that cheetah is the fastest land animal, oh, that's true. That's a general truth. So when we are using our present tense, it can be used to show what? General truth. Then we use it to introduce a quote. Aristotle says. That says is a present form of a verb stated by an individual. So Aristotle says man is a political animal. Now, that's that for the present introduction of the present tense. Now, just like having variations of past tense, we also have variations of the present tense. So we're going to look at the present tense used in varying verb forms. So we have I play piano. That's present, simple present tense. I play piano. It could be she plays piano. So when you are using a plural pronoun, you must use your plural verb. If you're using a singular pronoun, then you will use a singular verb. Now, I is the only singular pronoun that attracts plural verb. Yes. I is the only singular pronoun that attracts what? plural verb. So I can't say I plays the piano. It is wrong, grammatically wrong. So it's I play piano and it's in the present. Sarah is coming, that's present continuous. Remember, we are looking at variations of present tense. We have seen present tense in respect to regular verbs. I play piano. If it were to be past, it would be I played. All right? So I play piano. Play is a present tense form from the angle of regular verbs. Now, Sarah is coming tonight for dinner, or Sarah is coming to dinner tonight. Is coming, is a present verb form. Coming is a continuous. Remember, I told us ing type of verb without the auxiliary verb is no verb. So the presence of is makes it present, and not just present but present continuous, because ing type of verb with an auxiliary verb, it's a continuous verb. So it can be present continuous or past continuous depending on the auxiliary verb that is used. Okay, so the next one says she has been to the cinema today. Has is a present form of the perfect tense. All right, so has is a present form. So has been is called present perfect tense. Then we have I am going to the zoo to see the tigers. Am is also a present tense. Going is a continuous. Then finally we have Richie has been building a wall. Has been building. That is present perfect continuous. That is just it. You just have to know how they are formed. And once you get them, it's easy to identify them in sentences and also use them in your reported speeches and active and passive voice. All right, then finally under tense, we have the future tense. The future tense is used to express an action or state of being that has not yet happened but is expected to happen in the future. By virtue of the word future, that's what it means. So whenever you hear of the future tense, you have going or will as the two key words that introduce the future tense. So let's look at the variations of future tense. We are going to Edinburgh together. We are going to Edinburgh together. So going to is what you have not done when you're planning to do it. So going to is a future tense word. Then we have they will have cooked dinner by the time we are home. They will have cooked dinner. That's future tense, future perfect tense. All right, that's future perfect tense, exactly. Present future perfect tense. They will have cooked dinner by the time we are home. Then we have Sam will be a good doctor when he's older. That's still future tense. Then we have Ben will have been teaching for 5 years in September. That is what? Present perfect future continuous. How do I know? Have is a perfect tense word. Have is present. Been is a perfect tense word. Will is future. Teaching is what? Continuous. I told us. So what we have here is what? Present perfect, future present perfect continuous tense. So that's what will help us get into aspects, having looked at the variations of the past, the present, and the future. Then we'll move it to aspects. So what are aspects now? They are used to show how an action, event, or state extends over a period of time. How an action in an event or state extends over a period of time. For example, did the action begin in the past but has still not finished, or is it ongoing? Did the action begin in the past, still has not finished? That's the present perfect. All right, that's ongoing, that's continuous tense. So these are the things we'll look at. So each of the three main tenses, each of them is divided into 4 aspects. Aspects show the time-related characteristics of a sentence, such as whether a verb is ongoing, whether a verb is repeated, whether a verb is completed. So that's what aspects do. while tenses tell you the time of an action, aspects go further to tell you if the verb is ongoing, she is smiling. If the verb is repeated, she was beaten. If the verb is she had been beaten. So that is it. So let's look at examples now. The 12 tenses are the present tense, present continuous, present perfect, and present perfect continuous. That's present tense. Then the past simple, past continuous, past perfect continuous. Then we have the future, future continuous, future perfect continuous tense. So these are the 12 tenses that we have when we add the tenses alongside the aspects. So for present tense, under aspects, we'll look at present continuous, present perfect, and present perfect continuous. Under past simple, we look at past continuous, past perfect, and past perfect continuous. Under future simple, we look at future continuous, future perfect, and future perfect continuous. So combining tense and aspects. So these aspects and tenses combine to create the 12 verb tenses we have. These are examples. We have the past tense, I walked yesterday. Past continuous. Continuous is also called progressive. So whenever you have your ing type of verb with your helping verb, be it the singular helping verb or the past helping verb, you have your continuous or progressive tense. So past perfect tense. Now the past perfect tense has the verb form had with ed type of verb, either the regular ed or the irregular verb form. So to form your past perfect, always know or have it at the back of your mind that had must be there, had been has to be there. But if you are forming past continuous, you have your ing. All right? I had been walking yesterday. That's for past continuous tense. Now we have types of present tense. We have the simple present tense, that is I walk. Present continuous, I am working. Present perfect tense, I have walked. Remember in past perfect tense, we had I had walked. Okay? But in present, we have. So in perfect tense, the perfect tense verb forms that we have are walked. So if it is present, you use has walked. If it is past, you use had walked. Present in respect to singular subjects, then have in respect to plural subjects. Okay, so we have present perfect continuous, that is have, been, and working. So we often refer to past events using the present perfect tense. Past events using the present perfect tense. However, the tense indicates a link between the present and the past, as we are most interested in the result of the action. I have already seen this film could suggest that you don't want to watch it again. I have already seen this film. So it's what you have done and you don't want to see it again. So the present perfect continuous also suggests an ongoing link between the past and the present. Sorry, I'm late. I have been working. I have been working. Said it suggests a link between the past and the present. This been shows past. Then have is what is showing present. That's the link. Then finally, we have types of future tense. You have future tense simple, I will work. Future continuous, I will be working. Future perfect tense, I will have worked. I will have worked. Future perfect tense. Then future perfect continuous, I will have been working. So these are the aspects that we have in English. All right, let's look at the task. Before we go to our ExamGuide app, let's just look at this task. I would like you to try it out and see how good you have learned on the topic. So it says decide if the verb in brackets should be in the present simple or the present continuous. Remember, present simple for singular verbs, or rather singular subjects, you will now have she smiles, she sings, he cooks. That there must be S for present singular. But if it's plural verbs, it has to be, it will retain the word that is there. Yes, it has to retain the word. So let's look at it. Then present continuous, it has to be is singing, is dancing, cooking. That's that. So he dashed with his parents at the moment. So should it be present simple or present continuous? Would you say he living with his parents at the moment? I guess it's wrong. So he lives with the parents at the moment. He lives with the parents at the moment. All right, so I would like you to do the others. Now, there's another task here. Look at this. It's like a story. All right, so you have decide if the verbs should be in the past simple or past continuous. Decide if the verb should be in the past simple or past continuous. Story 1 says, it was a hot day, so what happened? Will it be I decided or I was deciding? So for me, I will read the story, then you will do story 2. Let me do story 1. You try your hands on story 2. It says, it was a hot day, so I decided to prepare salad for lunch. Outside, the children were playing in the garden. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise followed by a scream. I ran outside to see what was happening. Or no, we could say I ran outside to see what happened. What was happening? Remember, we say we should use past continuous. So I ran outside to see what was happening. So you try story 2 and see how it will come out. All right, till we'll meet next time. Do well to go to your exam guide. So for now, let's look at our exam guide. Let's take 1 or 2 questions from there. All right, let's look at this. Remember, we treated tenses, so we want to know how far we have learned our use of verb, either in the present, the past, or the future. It could be past perfect, it could be present perfect, it could be present perfect continuous, it could be past perfect continuous, it could be future perfect, it could be future perfect continuous, depending on what it's demanded of you. So question 1 says, it is about time you dash to bed. Now, this very sentence seems to pose a lot of problem. So once you see it's about time, it's high time, anytime you have it's about time or it's high time, you go for the past tense of that verb. So it's about time you went to bed. It's about time you went to bed. It's high time you stopped discussing. It's something that is in the present, but there's an extension to the past. So it's high time you stopped gossiping. It's high time you looked into the matter. So it's about time you went to bed. So let's see what the answer says. Oh, okay. So it says answer is C. About time and high time. You see it? About time and high time indicate action that should have taken place. So they agree with the past tense verb. All right? So they agree with the past tense verb. So that's it. High time and about time. So once you have either of these 2 phrases, make sure you approach it with that rule. Go for the past form of that verb. Okay, let's take another one. Okay, this says the cook should have dashed the pepper and the tomatoes together. The cook should have dashed the pepper and the tomatoes together. I want to clear something. When it comes to food, you want to talk about food coming in a fine form. All right, you say ground. You don't say grounded. Grounded is used for maybe let's say a child who misbehaved and he's to be grounded, he's to be punished, he's to be kept at home for a particular period of time. So when we talk about ground pepper and you want to tell me that your pepper is in a fine state, tomato is in a smooth state, then it's ground pepper or ground tomato, just like your sugar, your ground sugar, not grounded sugar. So let's see. So it says the cook should have ground pepper and tomatoes together. So we have ground, grind, grinds, grounded. All right, so it says the answer is A. Past tense of grind is what? Ground, grind, ground, ground, not grounded. All right, let's take the last one. Then I will leave you to do others. It says, my mother remarked that it was high time. That's that same word. So you know what the answer is. It's high time we dash preparing the supper. That means it must be in the past. It's high time we started. All right, they say the answer is C. High time and about time usually agree with what? Past tense verb. So you can try your hands in questions on tenses and aspects and see how far you have learned. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and practice mode. It also has other features that make learning fun. It is a must-have for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to people that will benefit from it. Bye.